Hey everyone, it's Jen Swati, and I am going to go through my special education interviews. I interviewed this administrator, a teacher, and a paraprofessional, all working in special education. And the first thing I wanted to know from them was their background. The administrator had started working as a school psychologist, particularly in early childhood, and then moved into an administrative position 10 years ago, where he now oversees the early childhood programs, along with being the building administrator for an alternative program within the district. The special education teacher is the wife of the administrator, and she started working in special education 25 years ago, mostly in elementary, but she's worked in early childhood, has run a autism program in an elementary building, has kind of done a lot of different things. The paraprofessional has worked for special education for 3 years, and prior to that has only worked in retail. She's always been in the same building and always had the same special education teacher to work under. When we talked about child fine procedures, the administrator talked about the early childhood program having monthly developmental screening clinics and an extensive transition process for children moving from Part C services, which is birth to 3, and then to Part B services, 3 to 21. And then he also talked about having good working relationships with the physicians and doctors' offices within the community. The teacher talked about the student improvement team, which is the form of response to intervention used in her building. And then she said she gets referrals just from teachers, other general ed teachers. The paraprofessional, when I talked about did she know about child fine procedures, she said, "What is that?" But she did talk about how sometimes her supervisor will ask her to read with students or ask her to do things and then get some feedback on how the student does. So sometimes they end up with an IEP, sometimes they do not. So the most challenging part of working in special education, the administrator talked more about being able to provide staff training and resources when there's just not money in the budget for that. And then building positive relationships between staff and families, and also collaborating on challenging students. The teacher reported not being able to have autonomy with her job or being micromanaged with her time, being spread too thin, not feeling like she had enough time to train her paras. And then she also said that collaborating on difficult students was a challenge. And the paraprofessional said she felt like not having enough time to talk to her supervisor or ask questions about students was challenging, not having enough training, or just not having an understanding of different disorders or disabilities that she was working with. The most rewarding part of working in special education, the administrator said just the collaboration process with other professionals along with students and their families, and then when he saw his team successful with a student, that was really rewarding for him. The teacher talked about the hugs and all the love and pictures that she gets and calls from parents, and having those aha moments with her students, sharing in successes with her team. And the paraprofessional said very similar things, the hugs, all the love from the kids, how great it feels to see them finally get it, and then getting to work with good teachers. What advice do you have on supervision? The administrator had a lot to say on this. He said to communicate effectively and often, to not micromanage people, but to give them some responsibilities and let them, try and handle things on their own, to know the law, make sure that those under you know the law, special ed law, and to support your team, support students, support their families. The teacher said to work hard to make adequate time to train your paraprofessionals and to provide specific and consistent feedback for those professionals, and to trust your team. When I asked the paraprofessional about this, she asked if she could flip it around to give advice on being supervised. And she said to ask questions often, try everything your supervisor has suggested, to take feedback and learn from it. And she also said that supervisors aren't meant to be your best friend. So, how do you work effectively with parents? The administrator said to actively listen to them, again, to communicate effectively, ask them for ideas because they may have ideas on things that work that you haven't even thought about, and to validate their feelings. The teacher said to listen to them, they are the experts on their child, to speak respectfully, but to also expect respect in return, to communicate often with parents, and to always call for positives, not just negatives. So she said that for every one, maybe negative phone call, she really tries to have 2 or more positive phone calls. The paraprofessional said to talk about the positives of working with their child, to be friendly, and when a tricky question is asked, to always defer back to the supervisor. On how to work with regular education teachers, the administrator said he had very little involvement with regular education teachers in his current position outside of an IEP meeting. And in those meetings, he said he always tries to thank them for their input and to try and make sure that they're appreciated as a part of the team. The special education teacher said to collaborate often. She said she tries to attend some of the team planning times and just to connect with the grade level teachers, to connect with them outside of the classroom and not necessarily about special education, and to always ask for their input on accommodations and modifications. The paraprofessional said all her work is in the general education classroom, and so she feels like sometimes she's the go-between for the regular education teacher and the special education teacher. And so she said her advice would be, or how she works with teachers, is to learn their classroom procedures and to build those good working relationships. Advice for a first-year administrator. Well, the administrator said to find a good mentor and find a good mentor right away. To ask questions, to study the law and study regulations, connect with your team. And he said the first year, don't rock the boat. Just get to know people and make relationships before you start going in and asking for a bunch of change. The teacher said her advice for administrators are not to micromanage your special education teachers, but to give them some autonomy to do what they know how to do. Ask their opinion, because chances are they have quite a bit more experience than you do with special education. And to be supportive. Sometimes that just means listening. The para said to learn the names of your paraprofessionals and to make it a point to say hello. And she said it was okay for administrators to provide good feedback too. How would you describe the role of a special education teacher and that of a building principal? The administrator said that special education teachers are the experts on all things intervention for any number of learning, behavioral, or social difficulties, and the principal is the overseer of all things special education, and he must have an understanding of laws and regulations. Tells me how important this is. The teacher said that a special education teacher is the jack of all trades in your building. If you have a problem, you ask the special education teacher, and the principal is your final answer person, and they should be able to offer you support and guidance for difficult cases. The paraprofessional said the special education teachers are the people who write the plans, come up with the accommodations and modifications for her students, and they know so much. And the principal is the big boss, the one who watches over the entire building, including special education. Characteristics you look for in aspiring administrators. The administrator, again, mentioned knowledge of laws and regulations, a love for the challenging work of special education, a likability, the ability to establish rapport with lots of different people, and experience working on the front lines. The teacher said to be a good listener, someone who has a way with words or can diffuse maybe a heightened situation, someone who trusts their staff, and someone who just does not micromanage. And the paraprofessional said someone who is friendly and not intimidating, and who works well with her supervisor in order to see that she could have a good working relationship, and someone who understands that life happens and nothing is perfect. So my thoughts as I finished this: From the administrator, I gathered the importance of knowing and understanding special education law and all the regulations that go with it. From the teacher, I really felt like I learned that you don't want to be micromanaging your special education teachers, but to trust them and to give them some leeway so that they can do what they know how to do. And the paraprofessional I found really is someone that you just need to have a relationship with. And so all of that information for me as a future special education administrator or even just a building administrator tells me that it's really, you have to know your stuff and learn the background, you have to make connections, and then you have to trust the people that you work with. And I gathered from all of these people that they love working in special education. And so I hope I never lose that kind of love for special education, but I really found it interesting to kind of examine special education from these 3 different levels within the profession. So thanks, guys.